Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Chalk Talk. I am your host, Kim Davis. Happy Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, April the 9th, and man, has a lot happened since the last time we were here on this platform together. We have a new Final Four champions on the men's side and the women's side. There's some stuff happening in the world of baseball. The Houston Rockets are officially out of the playoff run, and I'm going to introduce you to a special person who's a part of the Houston Astros coaching staff. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad that you are with me today. Remember, however you're watching this show, if you will share the video with your online community, that would be awesome so that we can continue to grow the Chalk Talk tribe. All right, so super excited. We're going to first start with Final Four and basketball. The women's game over the weekend the whole tournament was fire. The semifinals were great. The championship was great. And it was just fun to watch. For me, it was more exciting than the men's championship, which took place on Monday night. So the women, South Carolina, completed the mission. They finished the season undefeated. They are the champions of the women's basketball NCAA Women's Championship. It was a fun game to watch. The first half, Io was on fire. Caitlin Clark was, she just couldn't miss. And still, South Carolina went into the half with a bit of a lead. They came back and they just really were able to do some things defensively. Of course, Camila Cardoso inside was amazing, but it was just an exciting game. It is an undefeated season for South Carolina. It was great for women's basketball, college basketball, just athletics. There were more than 18 million people that tuned in. That's more people that tuned than viewers who tuned in to watch last year's World Series. So big deal, right? It was a big deal. So I'm going to let you hear from Dawn Staley because, all the players deserve credit, and I'm going to give, Caitlin Clark credit. She had an amazing season. And Dawn Staley is just a person that, as a coach, as a leader, as a person, as a competitor, you can't help but really kind of check for. It was exciting. So here's Dawn Staley after the game talking to Holly from ESPN. Let me bring you Dawn Staley.
Coach, you're one of the toughest to ever come out of Philly. We don't see these tears from you often. Why tonight? We serve an unbelievable God. We serve uncommon favor. Unbelievable. So it took something from everyone. A freshman, Tessa Johnson leading the way. Camilla on the boards with a career high. Bree Hall with timely shots. It was everyone like it's been all season. How is that the imprint of this group? I'm going to tell you, Winston Gandy did a hell of a job on this scout. A hell of a job. He lost a lot of sleep. We had very little prep time. He explained it in a way that our kids could lock in and execute, and they weren't going to be denied. So I'm so incredibly happy for our players. It doesn't always end like you want it to end, much like last year. But my freshies are at the top of my heart because they wanted this, and I hope we can erase whatever pain they had last year, experiencing not being able to finish it here. So I'm just super proud of where I work. I'm super proud of our fans. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's unbelievable. You've given this group a lot of leeway this year. You call them the daycare. You've had to coach a different way. There you go. South Kids, no, we're number one. I'm not a zero. We're number one, South Kids. We're number one.
you have to let young people be who they are, but you also have to guide them and help them navigate through this tough world. But when young people lock in and have a belief and have a trust, and their parents have that same trust, this is what can happen. They made history. They etched their names in the history books when this is the unlikeliest group to do it. And sometimes, I mean, God is funny like that. He's funny. He rips your heart out, and he makes you believe. He makes you believe the unimaginable. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you.
That was Dawn Staley. And so I listened to that interview. I listened to her on the podium when she was talking to the fans, when she gave credit to also Caitlin Clark. And I mentioned that because there's been so much, the networks have received some rightfully so criticism because of how they even covered the championship. I mean, South Carolina's a champion. It's the 10th time a team has gone undefeated. There's all sorts of history things that happened. They got to the Final Four last year and lost to Iowa in the semifinals. And so they were on Raven Johnson, one of the South Carolina women players, had called it a revenge tour. She took it personally because she felt like she fell short. And so they completed that. They completed the mission. They had an assignment and they completed it. But after the game, ABC followed Iowa's team all the way down the tunnel in the locker room. CNN on all their posts, they started with pictures of Iowa and Caitlin Clark. And listen, this is not to take anything away from Caitlin Clark and what she has accomplished and the amazing player she was on the collegiate level. I'm sure she'll be really good when she gets to the WNBA, but the champions were South Carolina. And so it goes to show, I mean, and I listened and I read a lot of stuff over the past week, right? When Angel Reese and LSU lost to Iowa in the semifinal game, and Angel Reese showed up and she was emotional on the podium in the post-game interview, and she was in tears. And she wasn't in tears because they lost, which is not uncommon because that happens with men and women, professionals, college. When they lose when the season's over, it's not uncommon to see that emotional rush. But she talked about what she has experienced since LSU won, since they became champions, since they won a championship. She said it has been tough to enjoy. She has had death threats. She's been sexualized. She gets called out of her name. She's been harassed. All of these things because they won a championship. And she is still a young woman who is in college. And so when I talk about sometimes how sports is a microcosm of society, we see it. So with all the great things that are happening in women's college basketball for women, there's still this divide that there's this vitriol, and you've got to it seems necessary to they wanted to make LSU the villain and Iowa the Queen's champions. And they tried to do that with South Carolina. I mean, I'm watching the game and there was such excitement from the commentators who were calling the game in the first half because, I mean, listen, Iowa came out and I think they scored 10 unanswered points. I don't remember now, that could be wrong, but they got out really quick. And Dawn Staley sat back. She didn't call a timeout, let her girls kind of get settled. And obviously they ended up winning convincingly. But what is that makes it where if you support one team, like you can support Iowa, but it doesn't mean you have to be anti anything else. You can support South Carolina and say they're the champions and should be treated rightfully because they're the champions. It doesn't mean that you're anti Caitlin Clark. I think that the narrative that the media has helped to create, I'm going to say that because of how they've covered Caitlin Clark, right? Give her credit. She has done great for the game. You know, the numbers are up. It is not just Caitlin, right? But she has been one of the reasons for this boost in women's college basketball. And Dawn Staley gave her that credit after the game. I just think we have to really look at how some things are happening. It was a fun game. So congratulations to the South Carolina women. On the men's side, UConn defeated Purdue 75-60 last night. it was pretty convincing. It's a back-to-back, 2 wins in a row, 2 championships in a row for the UConn Huskies. And, who knows? Are they back in the hunt for it again next year? But they did get the repeat. They got the back-to-back championship. So college basketball is over for the 2023-2024 season, but expect South Carolina to also be very competitive and in the hunt next year, because they've got freshmen who came in and contributed to the championship. They've got, sophomores. They will lose Camila Cardoza because she is headed to the WNBA, also with Caitlin Clark. So that is the story of what happened in women's basketball. Switching to the NBA and the Houston Rockets, the Rockets had an amazing March. They won 11 games in a row. They were at a point 2 games. At one point, they were 1 game behind Golden State for that number 10 spot. And then they went on a stretch of games that were really important. They have now lost 5 in a row. They lost a tough game at home to the Dallas Mavericks. They just were not even very competitive, really, in that game. Then they went to Minnesota and lost a game that was within reach. That was important. They needed one of those 2 games to really stay, a viable, candidate for this playoff run to try to get into the play-in. They came back home and played Golden State, lost that game, a game that was just, they needed it, and they just looked different. And so they weren't mathematically eliminated after that game, but it was going to be tough for them to catch Golden State, right? And then they've now lost 5 straight. They lost a tough game against the Mavericks. They lost at home to Miami on Friday night. Then they went to Dallas and played on Sunday afternoon and lost an overtime game to the Mavericks. They led by as many as 22 points in regulation. They led with about 8.3 seconds left in regulation. They were up by 3, and they had foul shots that they missed. They didn't make free throws, which would have given them at least make just one, like a 4-point lead, so that if Dallas makes a big 3 at the end, right, if you don't foul them, you win the game, because it's a 4-point. They needed 4 points. Or you miss the free throws. The game is tied. You're up by 3. Don't let them get the shot. They let them get the shot. Dallas ties the game at the buzzer. They go to overtime, and they just never recover. That final was 147-136 in overtime. And that is the game that officially eliminated their chances for getting in the playoffs. They were pretty much done after they lost to Golden State at home. So now what they need to do is they play their last home game tonight at the Toyota Center, and they finish the season on the road. They'd like to get some wins, right? To finish with a bit of a win streak, to go out, stop the bleeding with the losses and get some wins. So hopefully they get back in action tonight and are able to get a win. I'm going to let you hear from Ime Udoka. This is him after the Warriors lost, but he talked about something about the way they played. And this is what he had to say about the question. Well, you'll hear the question and you'll hear the answer. Here's Rockets coach Ime Udoka.
It seemed something was off. Did you get a feel for why it was so hard to get kind of footing and into the game the normal way, the usual way?
Yeah, it looked like the moment was too big for a lot of players out there. So it looked like they're in headlights a little bit. Either look soft or scared. One or the other. And that's two bad things for a lot of our guys to have, and didn't rise up to the moment like I thought we would.
So he said they didn't meet the moment. They looked soft or scared, and neither of those things are good. You've got to rise up to the moment. And so they did better against Miami. And then, of course, in the Dallas game, they showed that edge that they've had, that physicality. And they lost the lead, and they lost at the end and didn't make some key plays. After that game against the Warriors, had a chance to talk with Steph Curry and ask him just what he thought about this young Rockets team. And this is Warriors guard Steph Curry.
I think trying to form an identity around, using their athleticism to their advantage. They're a team that you can see tonight. They got on a winning streak because they try to, unleash their athleticism on the defensive end, try to, force you into turnovers. obviously Jalen's playing at a high level these last 10, 15 games. And, you know, they found something, and it's something to build off of, especially where they've been the last 3 years. So it'll probably be a problem to deal with the next couple of years. But, you know, it takes time to build that identity. And, you know, obviously this is Udoka's first year, so I'm sure he'll have them in a pretty good place moving forward.
That was Steph Curry after their win, a convincing win against the Rockets at the Toyota Center last week. So the Rockets are now trying to, you know, go out on a positive note. Let me see where they are in terms of standing, what their total record is right now. They're 38-40, so they slipped 2 games below 500. If they could get to 500, if they could, you know, end the season with a winning record, I think they would have. Obviously, they wanted to get to the play-in, but that's a huge improvement from what we saw them do last year, the last 3 years. And so, but I think if they could get to winning, they play tonight against Orlando at home. Okay. Then they finish on, they have 4 games left. They play at Utah on Thursday, at Portland on Friday, and their final game of the season is at the Clippers on Sunday. So, you know, do they get 2 or 4? You know, if they could get 3 or 4, they got to do something. They owe it to themselves to finish with a record that is, you know, if they win 3 games and they finish at 500, they've got to win 3 games to be at 500. Anything less than that, they'll be less than 500. But they did win 40 games this year, which many people did not think they would do. So the future's bright. They're pretty banged up, right? You had Tari Eason out for a chunk after the All-Star break. Alperen Sengun went down. And so what will they do in this offseason to improve on what they've already started? So we shall see. Now, moving on to baseball, the Houston Astros have started out a little slowly. And I was on Channel 11 the other night on Sports Extra with Jason Bristol and Zach and Jeremy Booth. And we were talking about the Astros start. At that point, they were 2-7. It's early, right? It's a really long season. Remember, it's 162 games. They played 9 at that point. At this point, they are 4-8. They played 12 games, and they're playing on the road. They were on the road against the Rangers. The Rangers were here last week. They went into Arlington. They won big last night, 10-5. There's some changes in the lineup, right? You've got Yordan Alvarez is heading in a 2 spot. They've had some problems, some challenges with pitching because they've got pitchers that are injured. Justin Verlander is not back yet. He did throw in a rehab game over the weekend for the AAA team, but I did not see that game. Jason said he talked about his mechanics, felt a little off, but you'll get Justin back pretty soon. You're still without Luis Garcia. Jose Urquidy is out. Lance McCullers is out, who you've heard me say before. I think Lance McCullers should be in the bullpen. But at any rate, they've had some challenges, really more with their middle relief, right? They've had some challenges there. They had a no-hitter last week with Romeo Blanco, who wouldn't even be in the starting rotation if they didn't have all the injuries. But they've had some bright spots, and last night was one of them. They were obviously very good offensively, but they've also had some slumps with the lineup. And so the question is, which would you like to see improvement, right? With the lineup or with middle relief? And I say both. I think they're equally as important, and they've been equally as challenging. And if at the end of April this team can pull to about 500, because you dig a hole and it gets to be kind of tough to get out of, but you don't want to dig a hole that's too deep, I think they'll be fine. I say fine. Start getting some guys back, and we'll see what they look. We'll see how they look, because they obviously have some weapons. Yordan Alvarez hit a home run last night. That was 2 nights in a row. He hit a home run. The Caratini also hit a home run. So you've had some guys that have come in and have looked pretty good. Jose Abreu, we thought last year, he was injured early. He didn't really talk about it, but we knew that late that, okay, he was injured early. He was able to produce, at least be a good RBI producer late in the year, in August, September, in the playoffs. But you're hoping, okay, he's healthy. We should see a different Abreu. And we have not really yet. He has not been that effective so far. So we'll see I was trying to see what his numbers are. That just gives me. So far, Abreu is trying to see what he's hitting so far. He's not. Okay, I'll try to get that for you later, but he is he's struggling, and they need to get some production from that spot. The Astros are on the road to face the Royals. They open a series there today, and so hopefully they will continue to find their way. You've got a new manager in Joe Espada. He's been around the team, but it's different when you're the guy in that seat, in that spot, making some moves, making some changes. You've got Yainer Diaz behind the plate. His offense has been good. The catcher last night, Caratini, offense is good, but they're still a learning curve. And so I think it's early to make any really bold predictions or decisions about what this team is or isn't, because it's just early. But we'll of course continue to follow the Houston Astros. Not going to talk about the Texans right now today. They are getting ready for the draft, which is next in 2 weeks, and they have had a very productive, very active free agent period. And so as we ramp up to the draft, I'll let you hear from the Texans. We'll also probably talk to Texans team president Greg Grissom next week. So all of that's coming. But I want to introduce you to someone today, and I'm going to let you hear more from her later. But there's a young lady that works for the Houston Astros. I was reading the media guide, right? Opening day of the opening series. And I'm going, because I always like to see, who's new, you find out things about people. And I've been going through the coaching staff, and I see they've got a new dietitian. Her name is Geordan Stapleton. She is a young woman, a young African-American woman. And I was like, wow, this is really kind of cool, because, she's officially a part of the coaching staff. And so I interviewed her. I spent some time with her last week. She's, she was very cool. I think I'm probably her first interview, but she did fine. So I wanted to introduce you to her a little bit today. You're going to hear from her more in the future. And I'm going to actually also put it in written form, because I think it's a cool story to tell. And so one of the things I'm doing, in addition to the shows, is writing some of the stories that I can put on my website and on a newsletter a Chalk Talk newsletter that I will be launching soon. And I told you guys I'm going to start doing more writing, and I'll let you know where you can see some of those pieces. But I want to introduce you to Geordan Stapleton. She's 27 years old, from Montgomery, Alabama. She got her undergraduate degree, a BS in dietetics from Florida State. And then she got a master's of science in clinical nutrition from the University of Memphis. She's worked in the minor leagues with the Mets and with the Pirates. She worked at the University of Liberty with all of their Olympic sports. And this is Geordan Stapleton. I asked her about a lot of things, but here's her talking about really what a day is like. Tell me what a day is like. What do what does it require? I mean, you making meal plans, you meet with players individually. Take me through what a day is like.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I just try to be around so the guys can, I'm new, so I'm also trying to build those relationships. I want them to see me, I want them to feel comfortable to come to me, talk to me. So I try to just be around in the clubhouse, before meals, after meals. I'm not really in the dugout that much during the game. I would say I oversee food service operations as well. So of course we play so many games, so there's a lot of food service catering, hospitality type communications with hotel caterers for team breakfast and and all the places we travel, reaching out to restaurants, trying to find the local spots that can like feed our team, provide them with the nutrition that they need, and fuel that they need to play well. Doing some personalized like pre-game supplementation, post-game supplementation, recovery. I do one-on-ones, but I prefer to like be kind of like the natural conversations are the best, like the most impromptu. They're so busy that they never really have the time to like sit down and talk. So like any little tidbit I can throw at them is usually how I go about it. Like, oh, have you thought about doing this? Or like, this might be a good idea. How are you feeling today? Yeah, so that's usually my day to day. Get here, try and get some computer work done, take some time away, like 2 hours up until game time to be around, and then during the game, getting some stuff done, trying to check in on what's going on down here, watching the game, and then post-game recovery.
Do you travel with them as well?
Yeah, I do. Everywhere, basically.
So that is Geordan Stapleton. I appreciate her sitting down and visiting with me. I also asked her questions like the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist. And so she is a registered dietitian, which is something that is you have to have a license for. And a nutritionist, I mean, she said, Kim, you could tomorrow say, hey, I'm a nutritionist. Wow. So I'm going to let you hear more from her about her background and her journey. She did share with me that there's another African-American woman dietitian. She worked with the Cubs. And I believe there may be somebody with the Vikings and also the soccer team in Seattle. So I'm going to work on those. I'm going to check on those to confirm it. But there are not a lot of African-American dietitians, period. And so I just thought it was really cool that she is in this role. And apparently so far so good. She was hired in January. So she started with them in spring training and moved to Houston after spring training, came back with the team. But yes, she travels with them. And as you heard her say, handles the food service piece. All dietitians don't do that. It's a lot of work, but also, like she said, the guys, know her as the dietitian. And so you would hate to be on the road and the food not be great, or up to what they need or want. And then looking at you like, what's going on? But I just think it was interesting. We had a really cool conversation, and I'll let you hear more from Geordan Stapleton, but I wanted to introduce you to her and, hey, welcome to Houston, Geordan. So I thought that was really, really cool. So what's coming up? What's coming up is the Houston Rockets will finish their season out on Sunday. They finish at home tonight. They'll go on the road for a few games and wrap up on Sunday. Hopefully we'll get some exit interviews. I don't know if they'll come back, if they'll kind of scatter. We'll see. Working on a piece I want to do with Reggie Bullock, one of the Houston Rockets. He comes off the bench. He's had some moments that have been really pretty cool, but he is a guy who was bought a small island in Belize. And it was interesting, just reading and trying to find different information, cool things to kind of talk about. When I saw that, I was fascinated because my good friends, Kim and LJ Williams, you know them, my friends at I Love Jinka, have been talking about Belize for the past few years. And Kim has been, looking at the fact that you could buy an island in Belize for what you could buy some homes in the US. And I just thought it was really cool. He has, he's bought some, property there, is building a home, wants to do some stuff. And so hopefully I'm able to bring that story to you over before he gets out of town or not, because if they don't come back, I may not be able to, but that's something I'm working on. And also to do another interview with Gretchen Shear, the president of the Houston Rockets. They have, a new network. They have Space City Network. I want to talk about that, kind of the behind the scenes in terms of the deals, because those are the kinds of things that she is obviously intimately involved with. And I think the business side of what happens with the organization, in addition to what we see on the court, I think it's just fascinating. So listen, women are doing some great things. Thank you, Geordan Stapleton, for visiting with me, and you will hear more from her. And share the video so that people can meet Geordan. All right. So listen, that's going to do it for today. We are out of time for this episode of Chalk Talk, but thank you as always for being a part of the show, for being engaging, and for sending me ideas on the kinds of things you'd like to hear from. So remember a couple of things. If you're not registered to vote, get registered so that you can be registered whenever there's an election. I'm never going to tell you who to vote for. That's not my role, but I'm always going to encourage you to vote. So get registered. Also, know that there's a special election coming up in Texas or in Harris County in the next few weeks. And then there's runoff elections that happen in May. So there's elections happening. And then, of course, we know the fall is going to be super busy and all of that. So be registered, be informed. And what I say is vote your values. That's how you vote. And remember, do something kind for yourself and do something kind for somebody else. Make it a great, great week. I'll see you next Tuesday on Chalk Talk. And in between on all my platforms. And I may just pop up with something before next Tuesday where I'm sharing some information. I also did a show talking about a business special I'm offering. If you missed it, check it out and let me hear from you if it's something that you're interested in. But make it a great, great week, everybody. I'll see you next Tuesday.